Welcome, Eyal, to Metallarium Pages. It's a great pleasure to talk with you about that, this this new album, that Deceivers, and obviously more things related to the metal world in general. So we can start by asking, I think, a common question. So why the band delayed 14 years to release a new album?
Well, because delay would mean that we had a record that we just delayed. We we went on hiatus. Um, we went on hiatus, and there there was no movement in the band all that time. I actually tried to restart it several times, uh, and failed. And then there came a point eventually, by 2021, where I just decided that I'm doing it regardless of who's doing it with me. I'm just doing it. It's going to happen. I'm sick of waiting. We're not getting younger. This has to happen. And, during that entire hiatus, I was unhappy about the hiatus the entire time
Mhm.
because I always felt like we stopped right as things were about to get good for us, and that there was so much good music left to make. Lots of times when a project fails, um, I'm good at moving on. you know Usually if like I have a company that fails, or a musical project that just didn't get off the ground, like there's reasons, and and I and I'm okay with those reasons. Learn from it, move on. In this case, I always felt like there's no reason for us to have stopped, and we had a whole career worth of great music left to make, and I could never get over it. And so yeah, at one point I just realized that I have to do this now. It's now or never. And I'm doing it with or without anybody else. And yeah, here we are.
Okay, it's interesting to hear this new or your approach about how the things went since your last album to this new album, but because that always has a huge impact into the metal world because you start your second album, The Hindrance, was released to Road Runner, then your third and fourth album was released through Century Media, and now you are releasing with Metal Blade this new Deceivers. So it's interesting point to see and why the people didn't more get attention to with a band like that because you are always with a big label.
Like, why didn't the band get bigger is what you're
Yes,
asking. Like, why
yes,
didn't we
yes,
get
yes,
huge?
yes, yes.
uh Probably because we went on hiatus.
Hmm.
So the idea of a band getting big, or whatever, quote unquote big, successful within their first few albums, that's not normal. Like if you look at Opeth, for instance, how many albums in uh it was Blackwater Park, right?
Yeah.
It's fourth, I believe, fourth or fifth. Um, Puritanical by Dima Borgir. I know they were doing some cool things before that and had some success, but how far into their career was that? Like the moment that they really blew up. Um, it takes a while, regardless of the label, because a label doesn't make you big. A label just puts you out there. It's the fans that make you big. And we never followed any trends. We always did our own thing. And I think when we came out, uh, some people liked us, and some people who were more interested in whatever was popular at the time didn't give us a chance. So it takes some bands several records. And like I said, that's why I was so pissed about the hiatus. Felt like things were starting to turn around with the fans finally, and then we stopped. So I think that had we put out another record, then it would have been different. And the reason I think that is from the merch sales. So the because that's a good indicator of how people feel about you. And on that last two tours, our merch sales were finally respectable. It was the first time in our entire career that we were actually making money at merch and people were actually buying our shirts. It wasn't huge or anything, but it was the first time that things were starting to look good. So yeah, I think we just weren't out there long enough. That's all.
Okay. And how does it feel the band returns with this new album for you? Is how does it feel?
Amazing. Like a miracle, basically. I mean, think about it. This is something I've been pissed off about every single day for over a decade.
Okay.
So there wasn't a single day that I didn't think about it. And like, some days maybe I only thought about it for 30 seconds. Some I would lose sleep the entire night over it. But there wasn't a single day during the entire hiatus that I didn't have some amount of time that I felt stupid for stopping or pissed off that I stopped or just depressed that I stopped. So to get to now be back uh, with what I think is our best record, I think a lot of people think it's our best record, um, with an incredible lineup. The fact that we're talking about it, that was holding the vinyl the other day, it's a miracle. It's something I never thought would happen. Um, so it's great. It's wonderful. Love it.
Okay, okay. Well, you and Sean are the oldest musician in the band. You, Sean, as the singer, and you are the main composer. Sing well, and then since the 2022, since last year, there are new musicians in the band. So, how do you feel work again with the new musician? As you told me, you have a different different lineup change during this hiatus. So how do you see now this new lineup? Is it stronger than ever, or perhaps you will see a more? Who knows? What can you? How can you explain this?
I think it's our strongest lineup for sure. And that's nothing bad against the old lineup. The old lineup was great, and there's some of the best musicians on the planet. So um, I think this lineup is more of a unit, like a musical unit, all on the same page, and we all share vision. So I think that it's just a more of a it's more of a collective, I think. And this new lineup, man, I mean, their reputation precedes them, right? Like, I don't need to tell people that Krim is one of the best metal drummers in history, or that Rafael Trujillo is one of the best guitar players on the planet, like, or that Jesse Zaretti is an incredible composer, like, um, and not as many people know our bassist David Marvuglia, but he's also a monster. So, I mean, these guys are incredible. They are incredible. So they're great musicians, great writers, great people, and they understand the vision for the band and work with it and love it and respect it, and it's great.
Okay, okay. Well, you mentioned about the writing process. So, how was the composition or writing process for these new Deceivers? Perhaps it was you completely, or perhaps you helped with the other musicians. As you mentioned, one of them are great writers, great songwriters. So, perhaps you involved with more influence with the new people.
So even if I've always been the main writer, I've always tried to take ideas from people I work with. Um, and there have been times where I didn't like doing that because I didn't like certain people's ideas. Um, I'm not going to say anyone in particular, but if anyone, and I don't necessarily mean ex band members because I've done other projects, but if I've ever worked with anyone and they felt like I just wanted to have all the ideas, that's not accurate. What it means is I didn't like their ideas. I didn't think their ideas were good enough. I've always loved working with people who bring great ideas to the table. And that's part of what's great about this lineup is they are such great writers. Um, there's this musical trust that if they say this part's not good enough, it needs to change, I trust their judgment that they're right. And then also, if I feel like I got to a point where I don't know where to go further with this, I can give it to Raphael, and he's going to make it better, or if he has something different for a part or whatnot, like it's I'm going to take it seriously. The same like with if Krim says we're we need to go in a different direction here. I'm going to take that seriously. So yeah, it's collaborative. I still started the songs and um, did the bulk of it, but it was very involved with the other guys. But not just to involve them. Like for instance, Hex Unending, you know, the final version is very close to the original version. Um, and that's because it didn't need very much changing. Or yeah, it's pretty close from the get-go. But that's not always the case. So, it's a case by case basis, but 100% collaborative.
Hmm. Okay. Interesting to know as well. Talking about now, especially from no deceivers, and as you can see now, the world is listening more singles. So for you, oh, we're returning time with listening singles. No? So for you, which single or singles are the best way to capture whole textures and essence that these deceivers has?
I think all of them. That's the thing about this album is I think any of the songs could be put out as a single and it would represent the album perfectly. Also, all of the songs sound different from each other. Uh, so it's an interesting thing that they all sound different from each other, but they all work together. So like I don't feel like there's there's any one that represents the album more than the others. They all have all of the elements that the album has in them. Uh, I think maybe Hex Unending is more of a single, traditional single type song because it's exactly 3 minutes and 30 seconds long. It has the traditional structure, like all that stuff. It's not super fast. But all in all, I would be comfortable taking any of the songs if we were to have picked any of the other ones as the single or singles, I've been fine with that too.
Mm, okay, okay. Oh, talking about a little about the history, you are one. Well, you are the last members of the band since 2000s because you started the band in 2000 with a different name, Dear Trap. Now then 3 days later you decide to change with that name, that name. So for you, perhaps do you still consider as the gatekeeper of the sound of that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that everybody agrees with that. Look, somebody has to, right? Any project has to have uh, a leader, and I don't mean dictator or anything like that, but every band was started by somebody at some point, right? Somebody started, every band on earth has a person who one day decided I should start a band that's like this. And even if they started the band with someone else, somebody had the idea and went to that somebody else and said, hey, we should start a band. And then those two people went and got other people, but there's still the person who thought to themselves, I want to start a band that does this thing. And that was me for this. And yeah, not just that, man. We all have personality types, and I my personality type is to create things and to help them move forward in the world, and that's what I'm best at. I'm not good at being an employee. Like if I was to go get a job in the world, I would be a horrible employee and would get fired right away. Like that's not what I'm good at. What I'm good at is creating things, creating projects, companies, uh, giving them a vision, and and helping that become a reality. And so that's my role at my companies. That's my role in the band. That's kind of just who I am. So
Mm.
it's not really like this debate point or anything like that. It's just this organic, or we all fit our roles organically, I think.
Mm. Okay, okay. So I remember Kevin Talley promoted that quite a bit with their music and albums at that time when they was in the band. So it commented that they had, but that you had an original industrial metal sound. Many years have passed since those comments. So now, how do you feel the sound of that in 2024? Is the best sound that you get, or perhaps you still consider the one oldest album is the best sound of that until now?
So I never considered us an industrial metal band.
Mhm.
Like, there's a lot of weird labels about us that I never understood, like industrial or groove metal, whatever that means. Like, I never ever saw that. So the band started because I wanted to combine electronic music with death metal. I wanted to see because there's this side of electronic music, even back in those days, that was super heavy. It became more popular actually, like 10 years later. This style of electronic music that like feels like metal almost because it's so rhythmic and it's so heavy. That I kind of just I wanted to try. I just wanted to combine the two. I just felt like they would work. But I always wanted to combine metal with other things, whether it's an orchestra, whether it's electronics, like whatever, but still be like metal, like extreme metal. Um, and so to me, what we sound like now is just a progression of what we started back then. If you listen to the Deceivers, there's lots of synth on the Deceivers. There's lots of like clangy percussion and synth passages and trippy electronic stuff, just like we've always done. There's a lot more orchestra, but we had orchestra on the Hinderers too. So, these are things that have always been in our DNA. I just wanted this to be our best record and our most over the top extreme record. Um, and I don't mean extreme as in the fastest blast beats possible. I mean extreme as in the most grandiose version of all the different types of things that we do. And I think it is. So when I look at the first album, Futility, uh, no, I mean, you're hearing stuff I did when I was 22. I hope that I'm better than that now.
Okay, well, that's interesting point. So, one thing that I saw always on the cover art from that is that you try to maintain the same concept because obviously Sean's in charge of the lyrics, so he tried to relate always these these symbols that like more like a dragon, lion. I don't know. This is very related always with it, always since I hear the second album from that, the Hinderers. So for you. What is the main concept that tries to put on the lyrics on the cover art, and how do you relate the music, that the stream music set that you said, with the aspects of the cover art and the name of the album, that is Sievers?
So the art has has always been meant to. It's not like some symbolic thing. It's a vibe. It really is just a feeling it's trying to evoke. And so with the Deceivers art, it's first of all the reason we have the Oris Boris deer on it was you know it's called the Deceivers so that our so that people know and we know too that it's a continuation of what we started with the Hinders and the Concealers.
Mhm.
Um, and the reason we put the Oris Boris on it was also so that it fits in that lineage. And the art on this is it's like a wood etching almost. It's a vibe. The black and white cover, it's a vibe because I think it's a pretty dark album. Um, and it was more just meant to represent the vibe of the whole thing. It's not like an intellectually symbolic thing. It's a vibe thing. Um, and so if it relates to the lyrics, it's more to do with how Adrian Baxter, the artist, interpreted those lyrics. I just wanted us to have a striking cover that said that this is us, that is very clear that it's us, but that also represented the darkness in the music, but that was very intricately detailed, like the music. Like you can zoom in on any of the details in the art, and there's more details and more details and more details. And that's kind of how our music is. If you were to mute one, like the vocals, or mute the guitars, or mute the orchestra and the vocals, and just listen to the lead guitars and Krim, like you'll hear all these layers. You can just keep going deeper and deeper in it. And that's that's where I see the link between the art and the music, is we have very detailed art that and very detailed music, and it's more of a vibe than actual one-to-one uh, symbolism thing.
Okay, interesting to know, because the next question goes to that. Um, for me, the next question is, why do you try to use always that the hinderers, that the concealers, that the deceivers, usually always the on those three albums? It's curious thing. You mentioned about the Ouroboros, and why do you decide to use Ouroboros as one of the symbols of that?
Well, well, we tried not to once. We tried the self-titled, and it's our worst record. So, um, so stick with what works. But the idea was that we were originally always going to, or at least until we were done with it, done with the idea, is to keep making um, albums that follow that lineage of the hinderers and the concealers. Um, I think that it's important in that these albums are very personal. They're how we it's is the negative side of how we see the world, and how we see people in the world. And so this just happens to be uh, what we were focused on at this point in time, is people who use deception to hold you back or to harm you. And then the Ouroboros deer, that was a symbol that our previous artist Jordan Haley made for us, so that we could always have a visual symbol for the band that was cool, that we liked. I mean, that's what it is. It's like it's a band symbol.
Okay. Okay, interesting point. So, relating to the promotion for this new for this new album, that Deceivers. So, what kind of plans do you have? Perhaps you will do tours in Europe, Asia, who knows, Latin America, or perhaps you will present more videos. Who knows? What kind of plans do you have for the band and for this new album, that Deceivers?
Everything you just said. There are more videos coming, and we're working on tours worldwide. So, nothing confirmed that I can talk about, but we're working on booking uh, for the entire world.
Mm.
Hopefully we'll tour by the end of this year, uh, or next year. But we're working on that. The It has to be appropriate, has to be appropriate for us. But yeah, we're going to. And my big goal is to get to the next record. So that means that we have to do a bunch of things in order to get to that point. So all the things you would expect a band to do, that's what we're planning on doing. But we just finished a music video for another song and have another one in the works already. So at least two more music videos, probably three or four more music videos, and um, instrumental version of the album will come out also, and
Mhm.
and a couple of other things I can't talk about yet.
Okay, okay, interesting point to see. Well, talking about all the kind of aspects, well, as you mentioned it a few minutes ago, that has a special sound. You try to mix electronics with extreme metal, death metal, I don't know, and the people try to relate the music with industrial. I saw melodic death. Other people say the group metal. I don't know why. I don't know why. So you are more, as you mentioned, you are more electronic, death metal, string metal in general. We put that label much
Or
better.
just it's just extreme music
Mm-hmm.
with that doesn't have boundaries on what we'll do with it. Basically, that's it.
Okay. And the question goes, how do you see now the overpopulated world uh, within well, in the music industry, especially in metal? As you can see, each week there are a ton of releases. There are more than 30 or 40 or 50 releases per week. It's very difficult to catch up on everything. Even we work as a web scene, but for us, it's very difficult to catch up a lot of releases per week. So for you, how do you see this aspect, these saturated releases each week, each Friday? Thanks to the bank and Friday, we have 50 releases per each frank, but each Friday is very difficult to know everyone. So it's good or it's bad for the scene to have a lot of releases.
It's great. It's great. I mean, first of all, not all the releases are worth listening to. So, but the it's never a bad thing when there's a lot of great bands putting out music at the same time, because all you have to do is think back to a time period where we didn't have that. Those are dark times when metal was, you know, it was never asleep. It never went anywhere, but the shows were smaller, um, and it was harder for bands to make things work. You would think that with the oversaturation that it would be harder for bands to make it work, but the really good bands like do stand out and do great these days. And I think we're living in the best time period for music and to be a musician. Because there are so many bands now, it requires bands to be that much better in order to stand out, which is great because it raises the bar. It I think this is all good stuff. Um, the overall level of things is definitely rising.
Mm,
And yeah, like the thing, yeah, there's a lot of bands out there, but there's a myth about the way things used to be. People used to think that it was better before when there were less bands. It wasn't better before. The way things were before, it was extremely tough to have any sort of career in metal whatsoever because you had to be signed to a huge label in order to make things work. That's no longer the case, and that's amazing.
Okay, okay. Well, the Tele having many musicians in the world. As you can see, thanks to the social media, there are a lot of people trying to juggle with instruments. I saw a lot of drummers juggle with a one snare, with I know a lot of things happen in YouTube. I saw many things.
Mhm.
So, and a lot of people are trying to play covers from I don't know a lot of bands in the world. So better, not better, I don't know. The difference, it's difference about the playing of each drummer, guitar player, bass player, singers, a lot of things. So for you, what's your point of view about now these new generations in especially in the social media are trying to play or juggle with the answers like the calisthenic musicians, they're faster, super technical, progressive, I don't know, a lot of things. So what's your point of view about now these oversaturated musicians that not interesting to create songs, just more to play the instrument like a fan and entertaining the people?
So, I just need you to know that I have to go in a few minutes because I'm already late for the next interview. But so the thing about social media is that it's not changing uh musicians necessarily. I mean, it's definitely helping musicians change their habits, but cover musicians that try to do spectacle type things or novelty, that's always been around. Like cover bands and cover musicians are older than original bands. And there was a time period where all the best original bands started as cover bands. Like going back to the Beatles or to Elvis or even before that, uh, being a cover band was what you did. And so when I see all these covers on YouTube, I mean, cool. That actually is the most traditional thing they could possibly do. And it makes them better musicians. That's one of the best ways to get better. So I don't see any problem with it. When people have a problem with it, they're forgetting the history of music, and that covers have been a major, major part of rock and roll becoming a genre and then leading to metal. Like that's in the roots of musicianship in these genres. So it's a great thing. And they're getting great at these covers. That's awesome. I think it's great.
Mm, okay, okay. Well, Eyal, the sad times are up at this interview. I hope you enjoyed this one like me. This new album is a solid
Very
one,
much.
solid as usually from the Deceivers. I love the Consailers albums when I hear for the first time. Really love that album. So, and perhaps do you want to add something to your Latin American fans and obviously Metalerium followers?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. And to all our Latin American fans, uh, I hope to see you all on tour in the next year. And thank you for all of you who supported us through the hiatus. And we'll see each other soon.